Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to show you a couple of different things that maybe you've never seen anybody do. The first one I'm going to perform tonight is highlighted here in the camera, and this is called checkering. This particular pattern is also called skip line or basket weave checkering because every fifth line you leave it out. And it goes from one pattern into the next, and you can see that it goes around the corners and all of that. Now, when I started learning how to checker, I got a book on checkering and carving gun stocks by Monty Kennedy, and he gave a lot of helpful hints in that. And I hope that I can pass on the most important ones. The first thing that happens when a person wants to checker, and you don't have to checker on gun stocks. You can checker on any kind of wood that you think is appropriate for checkering. But to checker and make it look really neat in composition, you need to make each diamond 2.5 times as long as it is wide. So whatever this width is here, this width should be 2.5 times. So we're going to start out. I have my little template here that I've been using for 50 years and it works for me, so I'll keep using it. You do basically put the long axis of your layout line parallel to the grain of your wood. Okay? To that extent. But the patterns you can see go all over. I'm going to get over a little bit so that you can see. All right, I made a line down each side. I hope that you can pick that up, but maybe not. Now, there are several different types of checkering tools. Most checkering tools come in a set like this, and they have a solid rib down it, and I find it impossible for me to do a good job with these things. I can't see what I'm working on. I can't see the line well enough because the ribs fall in. There's one person who is an ex-tool and die maker out in California who makes a brand called Brownell's See-Through checkering tools, and that's what this is. And you see the rib is vacant in here, so I can see on the back and I can see where my lines are. It also has the advantage that each one of these little cutters can be replaced by one of probably 150 that I have in here that will give you a different objective, and it can be adjusted at whatever angle you like by simply adjusting the two screws here. So from my point of view, this is the best checkering tool for me. Now, what I do when I start, after I get the line, and it's not easy for me to see the line in this light, but I start out and I put a single line tool, and I'm going to make a line. And this is not carving the wood, it's really acting like a scraper. See that line? I made a single line there. Now what I'll do is I take a 2-line tool that's got a double, it looks like 2 rows of points. And you put the first point in that line and you let it ride in there without cutting it, and you kind of lean the weight on the other points and you cut a parallel line whatever distance the tool is made for. Now I have the coarsest one that I use in the cutters here, hoping that they would show up better. But now let's see if you can, there. You see the 2 lines? And you just keep moving over one line at a time. And all you're doing now is laying out your pattern. You cut that one new fresh line just deep enough that the point of the first set of teeth ride in it. And it spaces your lines to where they're all the same. Do you see that? Good. It seems to be showing up fairly good there. Now I'm going to move this back in here, my pattern, and I'm going to make the next line over this way. And I go back to my single line tool, and I put it in there. Now, one thing you have to realize when you're cutting these or scraping these lines in, if you do them too deep in a single pass, when you go the other way, they're gonna pop off like popcorn. So you're going to take 5 times over this pattern before you get to full depth. Now I'm going in on that one that I just cut and making it's so much easier in my house with the checkering tool and the lights at an angle. When I do it at my house, I put a light like this, and what it does is it makes a shadow on those lines. Let's see if I can illustrate. Well, there we go. If you hold it, if you got a light coming this way, it makes a shadow on them so you can see it a lot better. At any rate, I'm trying to show you the methods, not the perfection. I'm not going to be perfect tonight, I'm sure. I don't know if many of you use scrapers, but they're very handy for a lot of woodworking. They certainly will save on sandpaper, and to scrape you can get some really smooth surfaces, and that's all this is doing is just triangular scraping down there one line at a time. And if you're well practiced at it, a pattern like this on this one side, just this one thing here, will probably take about 8 to 10 hours. So you'd have probably 40 hours in a rifle like this. And what we do now is go back to that single line cutter, and then we're going to deepen each one of them, one at a time. So we start out here. And then we go to the next line. I'm blowing the sawdust off, not spitting on it. Different woods are obviously different hardnesses, and so you have to learn by experience how much pressure and how many strokes each way you're going to do it. And it's something that you pick up pretty fast. It's just tedious and time consuming, but it really makes. Now you see that the diamonds are starting to show up there. Can you see them in that where the two lines cross? Now, how do we know when we got it deep enough? The flat on the top disappears. You want everything coming to a perfect point. So you just keep going down deeper. The finer the lines per inch, the shallower your pattern is going to be before it's finished. It doesn't go near as deep. And you can get cutters that have different angles on them. The first set that I told you that I had over here that I don't care for has got a 90-degree angle on it. That means that the grooves are not as deep as the ones that I'm using right now, which have a 75-degree angle on it. The gentleman who makes these also makes them that are 60 degrees. And I found that trying to do those, the points are too easily broken off because they're standing up too high. So I like the 75 degree. That's what I have on this particular rifle that I've shown, and that's what I'm using right here. Now, if you've been counting, I think this is about the 4th time through on this pattern. The real difficulty in doing these is when you draw your patterns on whatever you're doing, you have to have an edge where you stop, and you go up to that line and you stop. And that last little bit is kind of challenging. When you're just doing it in a straight line like this, it's not nearly as difficult. Okay, if you see on the one line, I don't know if you can tell, but on this one line that's going this way on the outside, I still have a few flat tops, but on the others, they're pretty well gone. They're all the way to a point, just like they ought to be. And you can take your finger and push down on those and bring it up, and you see what happens? I don't know if you can see, but you can see every little diamond in my finger. But that's essentially how checkering is done. And are there any questions about checkering? You have on your... No? None of these tools have got a right or a left hand. I can lay out the pattern going this way or that way, either way. On this one, it's cut. There's teeth, sharp teeth on both ones. I just don't put as much pressure. I put the one in and let it just ride, and kind of roll my wrist a little bit to the side where I want to cut the new line, like that, to put a new line down. A lot of tools do make it where they grind off the thing and they just have an edge to ride in the first groove. Okay. One thing that I was forced to learn 50 years ago was silver wire inlaying. I used to do a lot of repair on muzzle loaders for museums. And a lot of the real fancy Kentucky muzzle-loading rifles that were made by the cream of the crop of the old gunsmiths, they used to do silver wire inlay in their more expensive pieces, and sometimes over the years they've lost that, and so a lot of the museums had pieces that they brought to me that I had to replace the silver wire inlay. And I'm going to show you how to do silver wire inlay. Not that you're going to need to use it on guns, but you could take the base of a fancy carving, or you could take the base of any piece of wood, and you can put in your name or your initials or whatever you want to do in silver wire inlaying, and it is attractive. And I brought this muzzle loader to show you what I'm talking about. And this is going to be hard to see, I'm afraid. Okay, on the cheek piece, can you see the initials right in here? Can I turn it away that I really don't know. Can you see that at all? Okay, that's silver wire inlay. And to start with, I went and found a person who makes jewelry. And they had a pair of rollers that were made out of steel that reminded me of the ringers on an old Ringer washing machine. And you could adjust them down, and you put a piece of metal in it, and you ring it, and it'd thin it out and flatten it out. Okay? And I took some silver anodes from a silver plating facility and took them and ran them through this set of ringers back and forth, and that little piece that I started with ended up, quite long. And right now you can see I've done this many, many years ago, so you can see it's all tarnished. The silver is not shiny now. But this silver makes 6/1000ths of an inch thick. That's how thick it is. Okay? And the first thing I do is I take and I have to decide what I want to put in here. So let's just say I wanted to put in my last initial, Frye. F for Frye. I've written that out there in the thing, and then I will take and I made a little tool. I made several of them. These are hardened quill punches, but you could use little teeny tiny diameter drills or anything that's got a hard steel in it. All right, and then I ground it down on the end to a pretty sharp angle, probably 15-degree angle. Ground it on each side until it came like this. All right, nice and sharp. And then I had several of them in different diameters, because if I'm doing a flat, I want a wider one so I can make some time. But if I have to go around a curve, then I want a shorter one so that I can make it nice and make the curve nice. All right? And what I do is I'm going to start out here, and I take my trusty little hammer, when I make a hole or pound in, I try to pound to a certain depth, and then I put the chisel to where about 3/4 of it is cutting new wood and about 1/4 of it is in the old slot that I've already cut. That's so that I won't have any little dams between the direction that I'm going. Now I did just what I said I shouldn't do. I didn't get that little dam out of that one spot. I also do this with gold wire inlay, but it's a lot nastier. I take my piece of silver and I take some scissors and I just cut off a piece, usually about 3/32 of an inch wide or so. And I've got some scraps in here that I'm going to use, and I'll take it and I'll try to get it nice and flat. And then we're going to bend it to fit that slot. And cut off the tip because I don't need it. Gold wire inlay is a lot harder to do because gold is so soft that you can't keep it in the shape that you want. It wants to go every which way. Silver is a little easier to work with that way, but I'm having trouble with this piece. You know where I'm having the trouble spot at? Right where I made that bridge when I jumped my chisel over too far and didn't cut it. And it's hitting that bridge and that's causing it to bend and giving me a lot of problems. Now when we get all that done, but anyway, I've screwed that up totally. Let's try one more. When you push these down with the mallet or the little hammer or whatever and get them in there and get them down there that tight, at the bottom they really tighten up, and then I take and just put a little water on the wood and it swells the top closed and they stay in there. I've got examples of stuff that I've done 40 years ago and it's still in there real tight.
So you don't ever need any adhesive or anything?
No, I've never put any adhesive on them at all. Oh, I put a gun oil on it, yeah. For my finishes here, I use a readily available product that you can buy in any of your outdoor sporting goods stores. It's called Birchwood Casey True Oil. You take and put a drop on your finger and spread it, and the first time you put it on, a drop will cover about a 3-inch circle. The second time you put it on, it'll cover a 4.5-inch circle. The third time it'll cover a 6-inch circle. And by the time you get 4, and it's waterproof and it works great for outdoor products, and I just love that product. But when you open the jar and start using it, you have to put it in smaller jars and keep the air out, or it'll turn to gel on you in a couple of months, and it's no good. I mean, they got a built-in. It's a distilled linseed oil. It's not boiled, it's actually distilled. And it really works good. I'm going to go ahead and just, now you see how nice that, can you see the silk? Yeah, you can see it there. I didn't come around the loop. Without the pliers, it's just too hard. But that's the whole idea of it. That makes it a little more visible, doesn't it? But you could, this is pure silver. You can take silver coins, which you can buy at any coin shop, you know, like you could take a silver dime or something like that, and it'd make you all you'd ever use. I mean, this probably, you could get this much out of a dime.
For one of us to do that would require a lot of hammering, since we don't have access to the roller.
You'd never get it uniform enough, I don't think, in thickness by hammering. I think you have to find, and there are custom jewelry shops that sell custom jewelry findings and mountings and stuff that have those rollers, and for very little bit they'll roll it out for you. I used to do a lot of jewelry work with ivory and scrimshawing, and I'd buy those findings at a jewelry shop, and she had one of those, and you just roll it out. I ran into another one at a university where they had an art department, and they did some custom jewelry, and they had one there. So they're not as rare as you think, but you need it. You need it the same thickness, and I don't know how you'd ever do it with a hammer. You'd have to be a whole lot more skilled than I am. I would encourage you, though, if you ever want to really put your name or something like that in a fancy base of a carving, or if you wanted to, it's a good technique. At the conclusion, you can come up and look at my initials there. And tiger tail maple is one of the hardest woods I know of to work with because of the way the grain is and because of how dense that wood is. And you can see the kind of initials that are in that and how well they look. So,
Are you cutting the fibers, or are you just separating the fibers?
I'm driving a wedge down in it and opening them up. I'm not cutting anything out. It's just I've made these little tools at a real sharp angle, and I just drive it in and make a wedge-shaped groove, and then you pound the silver down until it's really bottomed out in the bottom of that. And when you put it springs back. All wood's got a little bit of spring back to it, and it springs back in and covers it up to where it's tight.